Hello, I'm Susan Guthrie of Divorce in a Better Way, and today I'm continuing my video series on the most Googled questions in divorce. So today's question is everything split 50-50 in divorce? I mean, everyone thinks that, right? It's always a 50-50 split, and really the answer is it depends. And it depends on a lot of factors. So one of the first factors would be whether you live in a community property state, such as California, or if you live in what we call an equitable distribution state, which is a state like Connecticut, where I practice. So the way that the law provides for your property to be split depends on whether you're in one of those states, because the laws are applied differently. Now, the first thing I do want to mention is what I'm talking about in this video is what the law says and what a court is required to do if a judge is deciding to divide your assets and liabilities, your marital estate. That is not going to stop you from coming to an agreement with your spouse to divide them in some other way, if that's what the two of you agree to do. So, as you all know, if you watch my video series, if you listen to my podcast, if you have any contact with me at all, I highly recommend you consider mediation to work through the issues of your divorce, because you are not then bound to only go with what the law provides, because it doesn't always end up being what is fair to the two of you. It's what, you can decide to do what you think is fair. But if you are in a courtroom or you are having your assets and liabilities, your marital estate divided in accordance with the law, let's talk about community property states. So in a community property state, the first thing that needs to be done is to determine what is separate property, meaning what belongs just to one of you and is not subject to being divided between you, and then what's part of the community. And the general rule is that anything owned up to the date of marriage and after the date of separation is considered that party's separate property. Anything that comes in from the date of marriage through to the date of separation is considered a part of the community. Now that sounds nice and easy. It is not. And this is actually in those community property states, this is where you get a lot of litigation, because what happens, just by nature of the complicated financial things that go on in our lives, community property monies might be commingled with separate property. A good example would be where someone owns a property, let's say real estate, a house, a condo, something before the marriage. They bought it with all their separate property. It is separate property, but it has a mortgage on it. And once the parties get married, the person who owns that property works, they earn income. That income that they earn while married is community property. So if they use that income to pay the mortgage on their separate property condo, they have now intermingled separate property and community property. So there are some very complicated calculations that need to be done. Bottom line, however, in a community property state, once something is characterized as community property, it is going to be divided equally, 50-50. That is community property assets and community property debts. The judge does not have discretion, and that is how things are going to be divided. Now, another thing to note is dividing every single asset down the middle is not usually very practical, but it is what a court is required to do. So there's another good reason why it makes sense to work something out with your spouse, so that you can say one of you keep the house and the other one take a different asset of equal value to offset it, rather than have to divide the house down the middle, divide the assets down the middle, divide the retirement. Now, the difference in an equitable distribution state is generally there's still a presumption that if you owned it before marriage, it's separate. If you own it after whatever the date of valuation is, in your particular state. In Connecticut, it's usually the date the judgment's entered, not the date you separate or the date you file for divorce, but every state can be different on that. And then the division of what's determined to be marital property, I always call it the marital pie. Once you have the marital pie, the division of those assets, if a court's doing it, is supposed to be what is equitable, meaning what is fair in that particular case. And there are a myriad of factors that a judge can take into their discretion in making that determination. So that's where you get the litigation on that side of the fence. And I won't go into all the factors, but there are a number of things that each party is allowed to bring evidence in on that might sway the court saying more of this asset should go to one party or the other. Now, generally, I will say, my experience is that 50-50 is kind of a starting point for marital property or the marital estate, but there are many reasons why it might not be divided that way. So your best bet is to meet with a skilled family law attorney in your area who knows the laws of your jurisdiction, or a mediator who knows the laws of your jurisdiction, to determine what your marital estate consists of and how that should be divided. You should know the parameters of what the law calls for, but again, you and your spouse can craft something else by agreement. So is it 50-50? Sometimes, but not always. Just like everything in law, there's not really a lot of black and white. There's always some gray, but I hope this was helpful. And if you'd like to see more of my videos, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I also want to announce the launch of my new podcast called Divorce and Beyond. That just launched, and we have some wonderful guests with ongoing information, not only about divorce and how you can get through that process, but also resources and experts to help you thrive into your new life beyond divorce. So I hope you'll check it out. You can find it on all major podcast outlets, or you can click on the link in my bio. And please subscribe. Let me know what you think of it. You can reach out to me at susan@divorceinaBetterWay.com.